California's temporary tax hikes expire in 30 days.
At least in Southern California, this is a John and Ken political world now.
The show is quite amusing. Just because a talk show guy wants to hold your head on a stick, they feel that their heads will be on a stick.
This is John and Ken's Tax Revolt 2011.
John and Ken Show, John Cobelt and Ken Shampoo, and it's a big day here at Tax Revolt Central because we have a new head on a new stick. And it's the first time it's not a politician's head. And we direct you immediately to the website.
Yeah, we had a head on a plunger once. He was an aide to one of the politicians, Maldonado, I think.
Correct. There was a non-politician's head on a plunger.
Yeah.
But I do not think we've had a non-politician's head on a stick until today.
Essentially, this is a politician because the public employee unions really do run the state of California. I mean, we're talking about the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, and their members in California make them the largest public employee union in California, 700,000 members. And to see how money talks, let me give you these numbers. They spent more than $12 million in California on state campaigns, including at least $6.3 million to get Jerry Brown back as governor, $2.5 million on the legislature. That was their history last year in the 2010 elections. So the guy we have on a stick is named David Kiefer. He's executive director of the State Council of the SEIU.
You know, this is an interesting period we're going to be moving into now because David Kiefer only wants one thing.
Your tax money.
He wants large amounts of your money for the 700,000 workers that he oversees. He takes dues money and he spends it on legal bribes. System is. I was on the phone today for quite a while with a reporter from the San Jose Mercury News. They're doing a big Sunday story on this budget and the cuts, and I told him this. I hope he uses this quote.
Conservative attack dogs, John and Ken.
I
can see it already. They all write the same thing.
I said,
let's see if he says heads on a stick or a steak.
or a pike or a plank. The main thing here is we have a completely broken, corrupt system. This is not the system you were told about in school. It is not. There is very little participation by Republican or Democratic voters on issues they care about. Remember, the polling shows that a majority of Democrats and independents, as well as Republicans, are against these taxes. So clearly the Democratic legislators are not listening to their own voters. You have some Republican legislators who don't listen to the voters. You have both parties not listening to the independents. The public does not want this tax increase. This was offered up to them 2 years ago, and they said no, 65 to 35. The poll that came out a few weeks back, the numbers were almost exactly the same. If we had a vote today on these taxes, it would go down almost 2-1. That's why I changed my mind and I said, you know what? Let's put the referendum on the ballot. But the Democrats don't want to anymore.
No, in fact, David Kiefer, who appears on our website at johnandken.com, told the Los Angeles Times, and this is the quote that matters in our war against him, and the reason, beyond other things, his head's on a stick. Go get a deal done. He's talking about the legislature because, as John just alluded to, he saw the same poll numbers we did, that the voters are going to say no to extending the taxes. So, he said in a challenge to Jerry Brown in the legislature, Californians would vote the taxes down. They don't actually need to be involved in this decision. We've highlighted that part in red because that tells you all you need to know about this hack.
He's acknowledged the inside closed nature of Sacramento government. F the people, he's saying. F you, the voter, the taxpayer. This is the biggest F you I've seen. He knows he owns the Democratic legislature. He knows he owns Jerry Brown. He now has a plan to own Republicans, which we're going to explain to you in just a moment. It's an interesting plan he's got. What David Kiefer wants to do is own the whole joint.
Well,
he's
clearly
tired of having to deal with wooing 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 Republicans every budget cycle. He doesn't want to do it anymore. He wants to own the Republicans, and he's got a plan to do it.
And he doesn't need to own all of them. So what they're doing is they're going on a statewide media blast, this SEIU and its director, David Kiefer, where they're sending out flyers and they're taking out radio and TV ad time and newspaper ads, and they're trying to make voters in these Republican districts pressure these Republicans to vote to extend your taxes. But the second half of this is what John was talking about. Into the future, they want to have their own Republican puppets by actually supporting candidates who will toe the Public Employee Union Party line.
Now, you may
not on social issues or some of the other thing, maybe not even the death penalty, but about your tax money. That's what they want.
And here's his plan. In the next election cycle, there's not going to be a Republican or a Democratic primary. Part of the deal for Abel Maldonado to vote for Schwarzenegger's tax deal was that Maldonado was going to get his dream of an open primary, Republicans and Democrats thrown in the same primary. Now, he wanted it for his own purposes because he thought he'd be able to win elections in an open primary as a moderate Republican who could get Democratic votes. It was his own selfish reasons. But this law applies to all the elections. So now you're going to have one primary, and you're going to have multiple Democrats and multiple Republicans all running against each other. The top two will then fight in the runoff election in November.
Actually, we just saw this happen in an election we haven't really covered, but it's Congress. Jane Harmon resigned from her congressional seat serving the South Bay in that area. And two leading Democrats ran. John's favorite city councilwoman, Janice Hahn, Deborah Bowen, the Secretary of State, and a wealthy Republican by the name of Craig Huey. Well, you know what happened? The first results said that the top two winners were Hahn and Bowen. But then they continued to count the votes, and somehow Craig Huey, he's a Republican, by the way, he got to be in second, so he faces off against Opie Hahn in November. But this is what can happen. You could end up with two Democrats being the top vote getters and just meeting in the next runoff.
Or you could end up with two Republicans.
Well, you could, right.
Or a Democrat and a Republican.
This guy doesn't care. He wants them to be two paid-off people.
Well, that's the thing. We'll explain to you how he's going to do this when we come back, and we're going to put his head on the stick as well.
And we have the phone number up on the website for the phony group that they formed. I mean, it really is ridiculous. It does say on the flyer that it's paid for by the SEIU, but it's a website that we brought to your attention yesterday, standupforca.org, and it's full of propaganda in favor of grabbing your tax money and spending it on public employee unions. And their toll-free number is 866-864-8567. So we think that if you're armed with that quote from David Kiefer on the website, you can go tell them what you really think of their plan to just keep electing guys to steal your tax money.
You don't need to be involved in the decision. That's David Kiefer. Now, David Kiefer's plan to start buying up Republicans we'll explain to you in a few minutes. You must be listening. You must understand this. It's really important. It can change everything. Tim Conway Jr. coming up.
Hey, thank you, fellas. Shaquille O'Neal has resigned or retired.